I kind of have like I don't want to spend too much time because there's so much I have to say about this episode.
Yeah.
There's like I saw this episode a while ago because I didn't know if we were going to record last week or this week, so I watched it a while ago. And just reviewing my notes, I'm getting just so mad reading my notes again, remembering this episode. I don't know. I'm just really excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, no. I just watched it, and it was
upsetting. Yes,
it's upsetting, but it's also conflicting. I feel like it has mixed messages.
It's all over the place message.
Yeah, and I think it's more of what we've been talking about, which is that they're finding their voice and they're trying to figure out what they want to say. But like their treatment of women just does not improve at all.
No, and I just this Ingrid character is just really man.
All like it's so much. It doesn't improve so much that like I'm actually a little concerned with how we treat women in the future. Like there a very big part of me was like, oh, we'll get there eventually. But like with each episode, I'm like, do we ever learn how to write women? I'm kind of scared.
Yeah.
You know, some things just don't hold up the way you thought they did. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm really interested when we start getting it more into the Cory Topanga storylines, if we are remembering Topanga's character. Because in this, I don't know, in this episode, she kind of represented, I thought. But
yes and no, because
and no,
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get
yes
there.
and
you know what?
no.
Let's just start.
Yes.
When this boy meets world, when this boy meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your Boy Meets World fan cast. Welcome to episode 35. I'm Ceej.
And I'm your boy, Tony and Curtis.
Tony, Kurt.
You know.
So, what's going on, Brewski? How you doing?
I'm doing good. This episode, I think, is one of the most interesting episodes we've seen in a really long time, and I'm just super excited to talk to you about so much of it.
Well, this episode is good and interesting because I think what it does is it's like exactly right down the middle of the terrible lesson we got last week and the Boy Meets World we know and love.
Yeah, I was going to say this is a really good representation of just where we are in Boy Meets World right now. This kind of duality of bullshit and like profound lesson.
Exactly. I feel like there are even some things where like it's filler and you're like, why did you even do this? Like, you know, you didn't have to do this. So yeah, I'm interested to start talking about it. So you just want to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Let's start with our Tell Me About It.
Tell me about. Oh, did you want to do the harmony?
Wait. Actually, I just want to keep that as is because that was perfect for me.
Okay, perfect.
But you know what? Let's make note to do the harmony next time. But that was just
next time.
It was just so perfect. I just love it. Keep all of it. Keep everything.
All right, cool.
So the Tell Me About It for this episode is it is the time for the annual turnaround dance, which I don't believe we ever see again.
Nope.
And Cory and Shawn, that the turnaround dance is where the girls ask the boys. Cory and Shawn are, of course, worried about getting dates. Shawn, not so much because Shawn gets asked out immediately. Cory gets asked out by Ingrid, who is not who Cory would like to be asked out by. And instead, they decide to pull a she's all that on Ingrid, and of course, hijinks ensue.
I thought that's a lengthier Tell Me About It than I would have gave it.
Well,
I would have literally said, Cory and Shawn, she's all that, a ginger girl, and it backfires.
So I'm laughing because my original version was exactly that. But I was like, maybe some context is needed. But like, no, she's all that is basically.
Well, I do want to give this episode some credit because this does predate She's All That.
I
However,
know.
this concept of we're gonna make over a geek has been around for
Ever.
forever. I mean,
Ever. Like, yeah, no,
yeah.
here's the thing. I didn't even look up the date because I wasn't going to be like, oh, they were inspired by She's All That. I was like, this trope is a tale as old as time.
And it's just innately insulting and sexist. Not. I'm sorry. Innately, no. Yeah, insulting and sexist. I
It's
would say.
insulting and sexist, which is
Yeah.
funny because the whole point of the turnaround dance is supposed to be like women first or something like that. It's supposed to like flip the tables, but again, it
No,
does
it's so sexist in itself because, and I think Topanga even later says it in the episode that like the whole premise that this is the only dance in which a woman could ask a guy is sexist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm saying like it's it was one of those things where someone at some point in time was like, you know what we should do? We should allow the woman to ask the men. Women never get to do these things.
And I
We
feel
are
like
progressive.
this has such a 1950s sock hop vibe. Like this seems so out of place in this like early 90s grungy Philadelphia that they're trying to paint.
As opposed to Harley Kiner and the Greaser thing.
Yeah, like it just seems like there's just two different shows happening, and I'm not sure what year we're in.
Very good point. This is like one of those hodgepodge concepts or times in a TV show where it's like you feel like you're getting so many different decades worth of storylines in one season.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and I think it just kind of speaks to the season as a whole of just they're figuring it out still. There's like they're getting closer to the recipe, but there's still some seasonings that are missing. And
Exactly. You ever watch the show Archer?
no, you always recommend it, and I've seen a few episodes, and it's pretty good. But I
The only
haven't gotten
reason why I
around
bring it
to
up
sitting around
is
and
like
watching it.
in the show Archer, like the clothes are the 70s, the technology will be sometimes futuristic, but the settings in like the 60s. And it's always been like this whole thing of like, what time is it supposed to be in?
Sure.
And like they just call that out every once in a while. They're just like, what year do you think this is? And they're like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just seems like someone was like, "Oh, what's high school?" and then watched a bunch of like Happy Days episodes and was like, "Oh yeah, this is what high school is."
The sock hop.
Yeah, yeah, Sadie Hawkins dance. Like,
Exactly. Well, I mean, but
anyways,
then again, maybe this is very middle America. Like, I don't know. Maybe middle America actually does have these kind of dances.
guys, if you're listening to this podcast and you've experienced a Sadie Hawkins dance situation, please write us and let us know. We'd love to hear about this if it even exists still.
Exactly. I mean, like you and I have always been coastal. Is all I'm saying. So
Sure,
maybe
yeah,
middle America does do this. I don't know.
yeah.
All
Anyways,
right. So first thoughts. Let's just go with first thoughts. Where are you at?
first thoughts, it's all sexist. I thought Cory and Shawn were just flat out despicable in some of these scenes. Ingrid, I don't know what to think of her. At some points, I'm like, girl, yes, get it. At other points, I'm like, what? Topanga has a moment in this episode that I really want to talk about. It's not very long, but
I mean, again, I
think it speaks to what the writers are missing about this statement they're trying to make.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Okay, so all right. So before we get into that, let's just do roll call, real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
And so on the roll call, we have Ingrid Iverson, who we brought up earlier.
Is she the daughter from the Honey I Shrunk the Kids TV show?
That is a good question. I have no idea. Let's look up Ingrid. 1 second.
If I get that right, holy crap! I pulled that out from the back of my brain.
Here's the thing: with your brain, I'm never surprised, especially if it comes to like '90s television.
Holy shit! I'm gonna get goosebumps if I get that right.
All right, so
I want to get it wrong.
I'm looking it up. Whoa, Ingrid did some things. Ingrid was one of those '90s kids. Would you ask to see if she was?
If she was the daughter in the Honey I Shrunk the Kids television show.
I don't see that on her IMDb. However,
okay.
I will tell you she was in several episodes of The Secret World of Alex Mack.
That's where I know her from. That's it. She was the ginger friend on Alex Mack.
You say that so demeaningly. She was also in the Babysitters Club movie.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, that's how I know her.
She was also in Beverly Hills 90210. Girl has credits.
Really.
Girl
Okay.
has credits. Just gonna good for you, Natanya.
Yeah, I know her from Alex Mack. That's about it.
I knew that Alex Mack was the one. I just wanted to
Yeah.
give her her cred. So that's Ingrid, and then we have Allison Cheever. Allison Cheever. We have
Oh, the pretty popular girl.
yeah, the pretty popular girl that Cory wished was the one, or fantasized was the one that asked him out, who eventually does ask him out. And then we have Becky Schultz, she's the number 3 popular girl in the school.
Yeah, we don't see much of her.
Yeah, no, we really don't. But the way that they use her, I also wanted to talk about because she's just kind of used. She's used as a Topanga surrogate. I feel.
You know what? I thought that like the whole like she's the third most popular. Like, who the fuck is doing this ranking system? That like
Cory,
Corey
Cory and
constantly
Shawn
seems
all the
like
time.
there's these arbitrary rules to high school that just don't exist, and I just don't remember putting those kind of limitations or those kind of restrictions on things in high school. Do you remember doing this?
So no, I don't. However, all I'm going to say is I recently ran into someone we used to go to school with, and I am learning more and more of what different social circles look like when you're not in that social circle. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure.
And what I mean by that is like I literally was talking to our other friend who is in town that I told you about.
Yeah,
When she came to visit, we were talking about my run in with the other person. And so she had one perception of this person. I had a completely different perception. That person had a different perception for the both of us. And I was like, oh, it's really interesting to just see how these things, like how people interpret 1 year of high school.
sure. Yeah.
So I like here's the thing. I feel that it may not be something that you and I did, but that's because you and I were like preoccupied with other things. But I could
Sure.
totally see Cory. Like this is definitely true to Cory, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. I am happy that we saw Topanga again. I'm also we see what's her face? Jonathan's booty,
Cat, Miss Tompkins.
Miss Tompkins. We see her again. So lots of females in this episode. Like,
Yes.
I don't hate that. However, the way they're written is problematic.
The Bechdel test. When you have all these female characters and you ask yourself, do they speak to each other at any point in time? Do they have any dialogue with each other, like about anything? Usually it's like, even if it's like not about the boy, but when you watch that we have maybe the most women in an episode we've had in a while, and I think they barely talk to each other.
Yeah, hardly at all, if ever. I don't know that I remember a circumstance in which
Yeah, I
one
can't
talks
think
to
of it.
another.
Like there are several times where like they're in the same room, but they don't talk to each other. They only talk to the boys who are inside.
Sure.
I don't know. Like it's weird. Like this isn't a Bechdel cast, like Bechdel meets World. That's not what we're doing. But it's funny to me that now that I can see it, you're just like, yeah, it's kind of a problem.
Yeah, totally, totally. Um, okay, so I wanted to ask you about something.
Go for it.
Um, Eric is talking to Corey about this dance, about
Ugh,
how,
Eric.
yeah, he has this whole theory about positioning.
Look, a turnaround dance tells you where you stand. I mean, the type of girl that asks you tells you who you are.
Well, who are you if nobody asks?
Then you're you.
Well, how do you get asked by a cool girl?
Positioning.
Huh?
Look, you want a cool girl? Hang near her locker. Stay in her direct vision. If she can't see you, she can't ask you.
And then he uses that as an excuse to be super obnoxious to a girl.
Basically harasses her. He literally like grabs
Sure.
onto her and won't let go.
Do you think there's any truth in this? If she can't see you, she can't ask you. Out of sight, out of mind.
I don't know if it's just female specific. I feel like that's a lot of people.
No, yeah. Just broadly, yeah.
Yeah, I think out of sight, out of mind is. I mean, like unless you have someone particularly in mind, I could definitely see that. It's just like, oh, I didn't even know you were an option or whatever.
Yeah.
I definitely think that that's a thing because especially like in a situation like this unless the girl is like going through the yearbook. you
Well,
know?
I only asked because like I mean I can't really think of a circumstance now, but definitely when I was in high school, if I had like a crush on someone, I would take like the long way to class if I knew I could run into them. So that's why I was just like thinking of things like that.
Yeah, but what that meant was you still like you had to see them.
Yeah,
You made an
exactly.
effort to see them. Is all I'm hearing.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that kind of gives weight to it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But
All
yeah, I
right.
just thought that was interesting.
No. So let's go back to this thing you were talking about, the Topanga thing, because you and I had like very strong feelings about this, and I had said earlier that if Topanga's not in the episode, then I know they're not going to write one well. But in this episode, they use Topanga, but they literally use Topanga. It's like someone was like, "We're paying Danielle Fishel, so let's make sure she's here," but then like get rid of her.
It's almost like someone brought up in the writer's room, hey guys, this might seem a little sexist. Well, why don't we just have Topanga kind of point that out and then we'll make a little joke about it to soften it
Exactly.
up?
Exactly.
Um,
It
and
can't
then
be
just
sexist. She's here.
so just to be a little less like vague, there's a point in which Topanga raises issue about the dance when Cory approaches her about it.
It's a protest. The concept of a turnaround dance implies that all the other times only the boys can do the asking. That's destructive, gender-biased thinking, and we have to get beyond that.
And at that point, I'm like, fuck yeah, because I'm thinking that literally the entire time I'm watching this episode.
Yeah.
But then immediately after that, they follow it up with this clip.
Why? Besides, that weekend my daddy's taking me to New York for Christmas shopping.
Exactly. You and I were on the same page. I was like, so wait a minute. Topanga's this feminist character who's just like, we don't need to subscribe to social norms. And then they undercut it with, besides, daddy is taking me shopping. And you're like, wait, what? And then, I mean, like, it's supposed to be played for fun, but at the exact same time, it also takes away from Topanga as a character.
It's
Topanga
not
doesn't
who
even.
we know. That's not Topanga. We know her and her dad at this point,
I'm
and
gonna
they
say
don't give a shit about going to New York for shopping.
exactly, and she doesn't even call him daddy. She's always called him Jebediah.
Yeah, that's also true. Who wrote this episode? And it's to me, it felt like they needed to feminine her up
Yeah,
to like after like her completely just it just like she justfully protested this sexist dance. So I don't understand why they needed to soften the blow with this, but that's what it seemed like to me. They were trying to soften her up.
I don't know if it was, to me, it wasn't even like soften her up. It was just that thing that we did a lot of in the 90s when feminism, like I've been watching a lot of things that talk about feminism when it first came out, especially in the 90s. Which, by the way, it's like not when it first came out, but anyway, you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And in the 90s, and it was always seen as like this joke, and it's always like, oh, this feminist who honestly she wouldn't be this way if she had like the other things. You know what I mean? It's like Topanga wouldn't be feminist if she understood how hot she was.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of like Topanga being like, oh, I'm a feminist, but daddy's taking me shopping. It's just like that way to undercut her strong position.
Well, to your point about like, um, you know, she would be less of a feminist if she understood how hot she was. If you apply that to this Ingrid character who shows up right after this whole interaction with Topanga, and let me just say, the gingiest ginger who has ever gingered. And it makes me mad because they're doing that thing that they do in television where they take an attractive girl and just make her look ridiculous to try to make her look ugly or unhip. Like
Exactly.
she has
She
this like
came directly out of those awkward family photos in her first
yeah.
outfit.
She comes out in this Dust Bowl dress and these like ridiculous Peppy Longstocking like braids, and I'm like, what are they doing to this girl? Like, obviously, she doesn't. No one looks like this. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, it's one of the things. It's a trope where you could tell immediately the first second that they show you her, you're like, okay, I get what we're doing with this. She's wearing glasses. She's gonna remove the glasses.
She also has a really low self-esteem. Like she says, like she asks Cory, which by the way that Cory says yes to this girl is just so insulting.
Yeah, but then, well, I mean, like we're getting all over the place, but I definitely want to talk about that because there are a few things. One, we to go back a little bit. What Eric says is the type of girl who asks you to the dance tells you a lot about who you are. And so right off the bat, there is, even though they've removed the whole pressure of like boys asking, they kind of flipped it back and was like, oh, the type of person who asks you out, now even that has weight to it. And it tells everyone who you are and like your value within the school, depending on who you get asked out by.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's weird. I mean, like, I feel like it would say a lot more about who you accept than it does, like, just who asks you out. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing I thought too, because just because someone asks you out doesn't mean you have to say yes. And
exactly.
I do understand that thing of like of a person of a different, I don't know, group, social
Yeah,
group,
social status.
um ask you out, maybe that can be seen as detrimental to your reputation, but I just feel like the more people who ask you, the more popular you are, right?
Well, my whole thing was when Ingrid does ask Cory out, my first thought was Cory was someone worth asking out. That means you have status. For her to be like this happy and this excited to be like,
She
wow,
was thrilled.
yeah, she was like Cory Matthews
I
said
can't believe
yes.
an average guy said yes to me. That's when I knew her
Exactly.
self-esteem was low.
But also, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, that is kind of like an undercut. And I also feel like the script put that in there. No one would actually say out loud, wow, one of the normies said yes to me. You're like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
that's so weird.
I
And
can
then
hear you.
we get this theme again of just Corey being average guy. Like I
Like,
feel
there's
like
anything
this,
wrong with being average. Most people would love to be just average in high school. Like,
and
everyone thinks they're below status.
I guess what I'm wondering is why like there's this theme that Corey is metaphorically just your everyday kid. Like he's an
Yeah.
average guy. But I don't know. I feel like when you add words like average and normal, it can sometimes exclude people who don't fit into those groups.
That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
Wow.
If he's average, he's the median. He's not quite exceptional in any way.
Like he makes Shawn feel self-conscious all the time just by being perceived that way. You know what I mean? Like it's like beneficial to one and detrimental to the other.
Yeah,
It's just
which by the way, like I do want to point out, Shawn is a great friend this episode. I mean, he's a lousy boy. Like he's like as a he's at his peak fuckboyness, but at the exact same time, he's a great friend to Cory.
I that might be true. I think Shawn is trash in this episode. And
Oh no,
specifically,
he's
there's one scene at the kitchen table that really kind of confirmed that to me with him and
what
Corey.
part? Go for it.
Okay, so Corey and Shawn are at the kitchen table and like damn serial killers. They have these cut up magazines. They're trying to put together like the perfect woman.
Yep.
And Morgan, young, impressionable Morgan, shows up out of the abyss, wherever the fuck she's been. And she goes,
What do you think? Ingrid with this hair?
And these lips.
All right, Morgan, go bring this upstairs to Ingrid and Becky.
She's scary looking.
Boys like that.
Yeah, boys like that. Was it Cory or
What?
Shawn who said that?
It was Corey.
Oh
He says
wow.
boys like that. I don't know. That just really. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say about something like that?
No. So it's really funny. Yeah, I took that exact same note, and I was just like, wow, boys like that. She's not wrong. I mean, like it's one of those things where it's really upsetting, but they kind of put a lot of emphasis that it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter whether or not Ingrid likes what she looks like at the end of it. This is what boys like. This is the purpose of it, and we're gonna make her into someone that other boys want for the sake of Cory, despite what she wants. Like, there's no
What
discussion to
what
her.
drove me crazy is that Ingrid Ingrid has no agency. They never consult with her, yet she seems shockingly on board for all of it.
Oh yeah,
She
of
is
course.
so on. At one, they're like talking about her right in front of her as if she's not even there. About how they have to come up with a scheme to make her cool, and I'm like, how? Why is she even like listening to this?
So what's really interesting to me, and I have a theory about that, but what's interesting to me is that it's not just the fact that Ingrid, like, Ingrid being hot isn't enough. Like, which, like, how terrible is that? Where Ingrid comes down the stairs and both Becky and Cory are like, "Wow, you look great," and Shawn's like, "Nope, it's not enough." He's like, "What?" He's like, "She needs something else." I mean, like, yeah, she's hot, but like, what does that give you?
Oh,
And it
Sean's
looks like,
plan is again super ridiculous.
I mean, like,
What?
but I'm not saying that. Like, I mean, he's right in the fact that it's idiotic, but he's just like, all right, so she's from Sweden, which he, constantly has to be reminded is not Switzerland. She's from Sweden, and there's like topless beaches there, so boys will think about topless beaches whenever they see her. If we can do that, and that'll make her cool. So it's very stupid, but
Yeah.
it has
Sean
logic
comes
behind
up with a master plan
and it
to
works.
further exploit this girl by bringing it to attention to the fact that in her native country, women go to beaches and wear nothing. So this underage girl probably does the same.
Exactly. So exactly. Even when he goes to that one guy, he's like, "Hey, why is she? What's with the clothes?" And he's like, "I gotta tell you something. Under those clothes, she's naked." And you're
Totally.
like, "Okay, terrible, absolutely terrible." But what I want to get back to is the fact that, again, Ingrid, it's not enough that she looks hot in itself. It's just like a lot of the times people think that, like, oh, if I could just look a certain way or do certain things, then
No, it's not enough that she looks hot. There also has to be this rumor that she's sexually expressive. Like
exactly. And
it's
that's what I was gonna
what?
say. It's like, wow, even being hot isn't enough. Like, for guys, you have to have something else,
You
something
have to be hot
unattainable
and promiscuous.
and
That's
unattainable
it.
in some way. Yeah, absolutely. So, but like,
What?
but my theory with Ingrid is that they kind of say it explicitly. I don't think it's a positive thing, but the idea that Ingrid wants to be popular. Like, Cory's like, I'm not with it. I think this is a stupid plan. And Ingrid's like, look, I want to be popular. Shut up. And I think that that's kind of her motivation with it. Is she understands that they are elevating her social status.
Yeah, totally. No, I do think part of her wants to be popular, and I think like that whole
She
an
explicitly
average
says it.
an average guy ask me out thing is supporting this whole low self esteem idea, but at the same time, and I know we're kind of jumping all over the episode.
It's
Forgive
fine.
me.
Whatever.
There seems to be a point at this dance that they end up going to where her and Cory have this learning moment of like, wow, I can't believe we pretended to be something that we weren't. Screw trying to be popular, whatever. If we had just gone to the dance ourselves, we would have had a good time. And it just seemed like they had this aha moment. But then a hot popular guy, comes up to Ingrid and is like, "Hey, you want to dance?" And Cory's like, "What?" And she's like, "Scam, loser! I'm about to blow this popular guy." Like, why? Where is she message wise?
Again, I think comparing this episode to all previous episodes of this season, we know that they don't really write women well, and women are almost always seen as like bitches, basically. Like, they're always bitchy, or they're scheming, or that's like how all the girls who are Cory's peers are seen outside of Topanga. Like, that's just like their habit. So it's not a surprise to me that they wrote Ingrid to be someone who, um, once she got social status, that's just all that she was about. And to be fair, Cory was the only one who was trying to rationalize their thing. Cory's the one who's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I did this for my personal gain." And she was like, "Yeah, I knew that, which is why I didn't feel bad for blowing you off," which I admired, by the way. I wrote down that I actually really applauds the fact that she did just straight up tell Cory, hey, you know what? I have a better option. I'm going to go out and I'm going this way. And she did so because she understood that she was being used anyway. So she
Yeah.
took that. And I was like, you know what? That doesn't make her like the ideal date, but you know, like a great role model, but it does give her agency. And I'm here for that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I did feel at all times that she was kind of going with her choice, which was fine,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And again, so my whole thing is we've seen these guys be terrible and it's just kind of like played for a joke. So I don't mind the fact that she's kind of a player in this episode as like a character. If this was a real person, of course, I would think she's
Sure.
terrible. But like as a character, I'm like, you know what, girl? They were using you. You have like new
You get
autonomy.
yours.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get yours. Because
Sure,
guess what?
sure.
They're not going to be thinking about you next week anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so hold on a second. I want to go back to one point you made about, and I know we've talked about this a lot, saying that they don't write women well, and this is why I feel like, and I know I'm gonna get so much heat for this, and I'll put a quarter in the jar, whatever it is. This is why I get so much flack when I say that I really think that Cory and Lauren should have gave it a shot, because Topanga's the only girl they've ever wrote that's a worthwhile human being. Of course we think they should be together. Of course. All these other characters are awful women. Why would we want them to end up with Cory? And then this other girl, the one time Cory meets a girl who isn't a monster, he's like, oh, maybe I do like someone else. And I'm like, yeah, Cory, maybe you damn do.
You know what?
And
I think that is totally worth exploring, especially when we get to the Lauren episode. But I think you're right. I think the fact that so far, and I know we do get like another nice girl down the line, but even that she's played for like, oh my god, she's possessive, she's too nice. You know, it's just like we don't get to really explore women, and I'm looking forward to like when Angela and Rachel join the cast to see how their episodes play out because we just don't write female side characters well right now. Every side character that's not Topanga is a bitch, and I don't.
well, it seems that any character that they don't want to make a central love interest is a bitch.
Yeah.
Angela was brought on to be Shawn's girlfriend. Rachel was brought on to be a love triangle with Eric and Matt Lawrence. So, like, again, they're there and they're developed characters, but they're developed so they can be the women who stand behind the men.
Yeah, but I feel like they're a little bit more flawed, or you know, like they're a little bit more realized. I mean, and maybe again I could be misremembering, but I just feel like they're more characters. They're not perfect, whereas Topanga is just painted as perfect.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
We just have to keep our eyes open about this, just because, man, I'm really honestly getting disappointed with this show, with the representation of
Exactly.
women.
And it's one of those things where it's the whole point of this was to revisit it, and we started off really excited, and I think revisiting this series, especially with this podcast, has been interesting because you're like, yeah, I did like it, but maybe I got the lessons I was supposed to get at that time, but rewatching it, you're like, not all these lessons are really clear. Like I see what you were going for, but you're not really telling it in the way that was timeless, like I thought it was.
Also, like, we maybe we're being too harsh. Like, we literally chose the cream of the crop of like rewatchable 90s television shows. I'm sure if we went to the bottom of the barrel, we would see that this was probably maybe the best there was for the time.
Oh no, I mean like the whole Zach Morris's Trash series
Love
shows
it.
you how terrible like the role models we had on television were. Like it's very very clear that this wasn't outside the realm or the worst we could have gotten. But at the exact same time, it's just when you rewatch something, you're like, yeah, maybe it didn't say the lessons that I thought it did.
Yeah, maybe I don't want my kids watching this.
Exactly. So I mean, like we'll see. We'll definitely see. Anyway,
So something else I wanted to bring up, and this is just kind of a side thing. At one point, we're in Mr. Turner's class, and they're discussing Pygmalion, and I just started thinking, like, when does Turner get a chance to go through all these damn classic literary works? Like, he must be touching on them like a day at a time. Like, there's no way they're reading the entire Odyssey, 3 Shakespeare plays, and then, oh, by the way, it's Christmas time, and now we're on Pygmalion? What?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It's just like they must be either doing the Cliff Notes version or like, showing the movie in class and then like let's talk about it, because you're right. There's just no way you go through this entire thing as a class. Or again, maybe our education system in Florida just wasn't up to par. Maybe this is what they're doing in Philly.
I don't know. I feel like it was one of those English books that just had like little clipping, like snippets of each classic book, and they just kind of discuss the importance of
That
them.
is true. It could just be a textbook where it's like, oh, this is like a chapter of Pygmalion. So you get the core concept.
I think that's totally what it was.
That's what we're doing. That's my idea going forward. There's just this textbook uh, that has like excerpts.
Also, Turner, we found, can really up his Guido anytime he
Oh my
wants.
god, of course. So now's the time for Turned On by Turner. And
Turned On by Turner.
I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. So, in this section of Turn On by Turner, I will say that, there are a lot of his outfits that didn't really do it for me. Like, because he just is all over the place with, like, his style at this point in time. However, the very first scene that we see him in, if you remove that tie, which is a god-awful tie.
All of his ties are awful, bro.
Yeah, absolutely awful. Everything else is working. He is working them jeans. They're not the like light blue jeans that he loves to wear. These are some black fitted, cut the booty jeans. I'm here for it. And yeah, that was my
cut the booty jeans.
Yeah, cut the booty jeans. And then of course when he did the accent, anyone who does an accent, I'm all about. Anyone with long hair, I'm all about. So Turner doing the accent with long hair and the cut the booty jeans, I was here for.
Long hair, cut the booty jeans. That's how you get Ceej going, y'all. That's the Turned On by Turner moment.
And this has been Turned On by Turner.
Turned On by Turner. Ooh. Real fast. I remember at one point we were very we were speculating on what Turner's backstory is, what his home life is.
Yep.
I actually remember that we find out at one point, and it's nowhere close to what I didn't look it up. I just remembered the episode where we learn about his backstory, and it's nothing close to what we thought. It's not that he doesn't come from this Italian household calling his mother Ma with 9 sisters. Like it's
a boy can dream.
It's a completely different situation. I think you're actually going to be really surprised.
I am really surprised. Or sorry, I will be really surprised. I'm really excited to see where we go with this. But I'm just saying, ABC, you missed out on a great spinoff opportunity. You should really be ashamed of yourselves.
100%.
Okay. Oh, so now I want to talk about the International Women's Network.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this?
No, I just immediately when I wrote it down, I thought because there's a very famous Pete and Pete episode,
yes,
on Nickelodeon that talks about the International Parent Hotline or something like that.
Yep.
And I feel like we've actually heard in this show about this women's network. Is this something that's been mentioned before where Shawn said he was like kind of tapped into it?
I have the memory of a goldfish, so you're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I just feel like this is something that's been touched on at some point. Yeah, because Shawn says he's tapped into the International Women's Network, and that's why he's able to, every time Cory goes through a breakup, Shawn comes up 2 seconds later. Hey man, I just heard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because how it works is when we're first introduced to it, Eric is telling Cory about it, and he kind of uses Morgan as a guinea pig. And when he says the thing about dinner, and Morgan goes and tells Amy, and Amy comes back in the kitchen. She's like, oh, the first thing that Eric says is bad news travels even faster. So the idea is that for the rest of the episode, whenever Cory gets bad news, it's just like, it's immediate that everyone, all the girls in school know. And it's because Shawn's tapped into it, so does he.
I do want to give Eric some credit because he does bring out a really good point, which is he's trying to convince Cory to not end the date with Ingrid. And he says, if you do this, like, no other girl is going to ask you.
Which is
Like, they're all
very
going to think
smart.
you're an asshole. And
Very
I
smart.
was like, I wonder if Eric will learn that from experience.
You know he did. You know that, like, this is one of those things where having an older brother comes in handy, because Eric totally made the mistake and, like, paid the price for it. So he is trying to warn Cory and just be like, look, if you do this, I'm not saying you can't, but if you do it, just know that every girl in school will know what you did.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to understand that he's an asshole, which he is,
Yeah.
because the only reason he said yes was because he was imagining saying yes to someone else.
Exactly. Well, not only that, but, like, I feel that Cory, of course, is awful in this episode, but, like, one of the things that really bothered me is even when Becky asked him out, but no, it's not Becky. What's the other one's name? We were just talking about Allison. When Allison actually asked him out and they go to the dance and she was like, oh, I thought you knew. Which, by the way, it does seem like everyone knew. Everyone knew what the setup was, but Cory, because Cory was being self-centered. And then
I also felt like she made that purposefully, like, vague.
I don't know.
I asked you to take me to the dance. I didn't ask you to be my date for the dance. Like, that's some bullshit.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing, but what I'm saying is when Ingrid echoes the fact that, like, it's been known, like, everyone knew.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, Cory doesn't run with the popular crowd. Maybe he just doesn't know. I don't know.
But
He
I
doesn't
think,
seem like
it's the fact that Cory doesn't. Cory's always self-centered, and then again, he's just, like, yelling at her and calling her out like she owes him anything in the middle of this party, and I'm just like, she doesn't. She, like, she's like, thanks for coming. I don't have to stick around with you, and this is something that everyone knows. I've done this every year, but of course, because to Cory, she's not a real person. Then he was like, no, but I wanted to go out with you this year. You're supposed to be who I wanted.
The other thing that strikes me as weird is that Cory seems to have this, like, March Madness style list of who's popular in this high school. It has no idea that the most popular girl in school probably has a boyfriend. Like,
exactly.
Check your baseball stats, bro. Like, you're being a creep by this, calling people, oh, that's the third most popular girl. Like, obviously you're in on the T, so, like, what's up?
Yeah. I mean, I do like that. Like, in that whole scene, I didn't like who Cory is, but I do like the idea that when she goes to kiss him, he's like, keep your pity kiss. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I actually like that they're showing her use her sexuality as, like, a way of apologizing. And Cory's like,
Sure.
You know what? No.
I had a question. What did you think of this whole Jonathan and Miss Tompkins? Is she going to ask him, dragging him along? What did you think of that little BC story?
I thought it was stupid. And I knew why they did it. This is another one of those things where I feel like they were like, we have this person here, why not use it? And kind of flip the tables and give Mr. Turner a little bit more screen time. But ultimately, we knew that there was, like, literally, here's the thing, if there was another female teacher at all, maybe there would have been some stakes in this. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you, I don't think they have any chemistry. I don't like them at all. I feel like Miss Tompkins is boring. I don't feel like she's ever had a storyline with Jonathan that I thought was interesting. I think she's just, like, the only other bangable teacher in his age range, in his sexual orientation that he has to choose from.
But, like, no, remember earlier in the season we had Mrs. Kim, who was a sex ed teacher. And
oh, yeah,
he
that's
went out
right.
with her. No, see, here's the thing. If they had brought her into here, that would have been a very interesting B storyline. So there's two women. He doesn't know which one, but, he has more chemistry with Miss Thompson or whatever, and, like, he's hoping for her, or whatever it's supposed to be. I would have liked that as a storyline. But the only other faculty member outside of Feeney, and he's like, oh, will they, won't they? It's just played for a stupid little thing, and it was useless. That being said, I will say that Feeney, it's another thing where it's like he kind of pimps her out. It's just like, hey, don't forget that, girls ask the boys. And then when they're at the dance, he's like, why would you waste your time Like you're a terrible chaperone.
Yeah, Feeney, you wanted them to show up together. Clearly, you wanted them to bang. And then at one point, Jonathan and Miss Tompkins are like, hey, why don't you go 69 that woman over there by the table? And then George is like, oh, yes, that's, I'm her boss. I
Yeah,
will
exactly.
absolutely go try to hit that.
But it's also
Excuse
just
me.
seen as, or it's just shown as Mr. Feeney is jealous. You know what I mean? Like that's how it comes off. It's just like, oh, he was only this way because he didn't have anyone. They remind him that he's still able to bone, and he's like, all right, cool, gotcha. I'm on my way out.
Yeah, like it's just I don't like what they do with any of the men in this episode. Hey, one thing I wanted to point out, did you notice that when they're at the school dance, they're drinking out of those same like red Pizza Hut buffet cups that they have at Chubby's?
No, I didn't notice that. Oh God, I
Yeah, it
do
was just
love
one of those
those.
little
Yeah,
things
do
I
you remember
saw.
those? The
Yeah.
Pizza Hut parties.
Oh, also, like, how homophobic is this dance? Like, do gay kids not get to go?
Oh, are you kidding me? You think gay kids are like allowed to exist in this school at this point in time?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if the girls like ask the boys, like,
They are not
dude,
even thinking about that. Like,
I
as
know.
far
I'm
as
sorry.
they're concerned, gay kids don't even exist. Those are myths. Those are unicorns in this universe.
No, they're beating up kids for lunch money and then doing poetry about it.
You know what? Maybe all the gay kids are like in the lockers, stuffed in the lockers together, and that's
Yep.
their one
The
on one.
metaphoric closets.
Nice, I like it. There are
Yo.
only two more things I want to point out real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. I have one more thing, so go ahead.
All right, one, Alan and Amy, when
that was stupid.
well, not only is it stupid, but the only reason why I'm bringing it up this, not even the storyline, but the characters, is when Amy is like, again, that thing where they kind of undercut the female's feminist point is Amy's like, hey, this is such an unrealistic standard of beauty that we're teaching girls, yada, yada, yada. And then she goes, where did you get this? And Cory goes, on your nightstand.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
saw
just
that.
like,
I was just
okay,
like, why are you doing this?
Because they wanted to, it's that joke where it's like, oh, women be feminists, but they also be hypocrites.
And you know what? I will say that the Amy one came off slightly more naturally than Topanga's, because I do understand that contradiction of women not liking that this representation, but at the same time, like embracing like other aspects of those magazines. So
exactly.
I do think that's an innate contradiction that could be, thought of as a joke, but Topanga's just seemed so out of character that I was like, whoa, whoever wrote this episode does not know who Topanga is as a character.
Exactly. But the only other part I wanted to point out from that scene is Amy's next line is, you didn't open the top drawer, did you?
Yeah, the sex drawer joke. Because Alan and Boom Boom be fucking, bro.
Yep, that's what I wanted to say. You done it. They constantly remind us that Amy and Alan,
why
if they
add
don't
that
have anything
joke
else in their
in?
marriage, they have a healthy sex life.
Why add that joke in at all? Who is this show for?
Exactly. So, I mean, like, and what's that joke for? Like, is it supposed to be so parents who are watching can like switch it up? They're like, oh yeah, we got some stuff in our top drawer.
Yeah, we got a drawer too. I think it's really funny that the boys are about to go to the dance and like Alan and Amy are shooing them off. Yeah. And then Alan from behind the couch pulls off this comically large tray of like grapes and candles and shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Eric and Cory just walked down the stairs. Did they not see this, like these candles and grapes on the damn floor?
Nope. Out of sight, out of mind. But I will say what's funny
Positioning.
to me. Yeah, positioning. What's funny to me is, what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think is in Alan and Amy's sex drawer?
I think that there is some light bondage stuff.
Oh.
I don't think there's any like phallic shaped anything like dildos or vibrators. I don't really see any of that. I see like handcuffs. I see like blindfolds. I see like maybe a feather. Something classy. Something you would have got for like $40 at the Spencer Gifts in 1997.
Like for who though? Like, do you think that like Amy's handcuffing Alan?
I think that, and I think it's a very playful, very TGIF, like cops and robbers type of sex play.
Good for them. Healthy lifestyles.
Health, yeah, whatever. They're still getting it. You
Yeah, good
know,
for them.
they have 3 kids.
Yeah,
They figured it out.
exactly. All right, what was the other
Why?
thing you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, why was this a Christmas episode?
Just because of timing, just because of release date. That's it.
What a damn waste of a Christmas episode.
Yeah, there's really no reason to even there's like no reason at all.
Why not save the story for like next week? Like why I just feel like it was a waste.
No, you're right. There's no reason for Christmas imagery. Like even the dance isn't a holiday party. You know, it's like it's not
Yeah.
even like the winter solstice or anything like that. They're just
But the episode did end the same way that last season's Christmas episode ended. And to my theory, all the Christmas episodes end with like a posed picture that has like a season's greeting,
you're
something
right.
or another.
You're right. It does. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But you know, I also kind of liked the ending. It was a little
Yeah, the end of the episode is basically like Shawn got dumped, Cory got dumped, Eric got dumped.
Shawn didn't get dumped. Shawn made that very clear.
His date just disappeared.
Yeah.
But I do like this idea that it's just like, because I feel like that's kind of what high school was. It was just like a bunch of like kids who couldn't be as cool as they wanted to, and they just kind of embraced their suck together.
Yeah, well, that's why I said the lesson is very murky here, because if like the fact that Cory is like sitting all alone and he's just like, I'm a loser, and then we see Eric and he's like, oh yeah, my date basically did the same thing, whereas like once we got here she was like, oh, my boyfriend's in town, and then Shawn was like, oh yeah, it's very typical of the girl that I brought to spend the entire time talking to other girls in the bathroom. So you know, it's just like this is just how it goes. If they would have played it off like that, like he did all of this just for them all three to be there, and that was the moral of the lesson, which is that you made this really big deal about it, but at the end of the day, you were all gonna end up without women or without dates. You know what I mean? Is this making sense?
Honestly, what my expert Boy Meets World opinion is that the last like handful of episodes have all had the same central lesson, which is fuck those hoes, be true to your boys. Like that's honestly what it seems like. Like the end of this episode, fuck those hoes, be true to your boys. When they did the thing where they swapped the girls, the chicken and the meatloaf.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. Like all of this is just like you can treat women badly, they'll get mad at you, but screw them. Who cares? You got your homie.
Yep, pretty much.
What is this show?
Bros before hoes.
I expected more from you, Boy Meets World. You're letting me down.
Bros before ho-ho-hos.
Oh, bros before ho-ho-hos. You know what? All right.
I know. Again, a perfect way to end it. I think that's it. I think we did it perfectly.
Oh, perfect.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I think we covered it. This episode was all over the place, but I think you guys, if you watch the episode, you can understand why we had a hard time covering like all of this bananas cuckoo craziness. I just don't even know what to do with it all.
Okay, so how about your lesson? Do you have any lesson? Do you think?
I said it once and I'll say it again. Fuck those hoes, be true to your boys. Bros before ho ho ho's is
Bros
the
before
lesson. Like
ho-ho-hos.
I honestly don't know what else the lesson is.
I think
Like be more attractive to be cool, because that seems to work.
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, even though I think the lesson is kind of murky, one of the bruh moments that I was like, oh, you know, that's really interesting is when Mr. Turner's like,
Come on, how you speak, how you walk affects how you're gonna do in life. You guys believe that?
Well, a little bit.
and I thought that was a really good snippet, and of course they use it to do the She's All That with Ingrid, but I think that's something that everyone in high school knows, and it would have been a little bit better to explore that whole theme.
I wish that they could explore that and at the same time try to understand the balance between that and, hey, if you make a nerdy girl hot, she'll get popular. Because there is still nothing that tells me that if I'm unattractive, if I become attractive, I'll instantly be popular. Like, that message still seems very clear. So I just wish that there was like a, yeah, how you present yourself matters, but how you look doesn't matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm.
I just don't know. I
It's
don't know how
extreme.
to make amends of that contradiction of present yourself well, but at the same time, like, looks matter, but it's not all that matters. I
Yeah,
guess
and
is
again, like I think even if you want to go with that, they don't even do that because the show never really comments on Ingrid's personality change. You know, they don't necessarily judge it within the show. It's supposed to be seen as like, oh, she's flighty and of course a social climber, but it's not like no one in the show is like, how dare that girl? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So yeah, it's. But that was like a broad moment for me where I was like, you know, that's kind of good, and I wish they had explored it. That's a good line that I wish had more depth.
Yeah. Word.
All right, grades. What grade are you giving it?
You know what? I think it failed in a lot of the messaging that was trying to give across, but I thought it was a, like, subjectively, like, it's an interesting episode. It's an
I agree.
entertaining episode,
I agree.
and because of that, I'm gonna give it like a B plus.
Ooh, I'm gonna give it a C plus.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give it a C plus for everything that you just said. But I feel that there's just so much extra that's not necessary. Like the storyline with Mr. Turner and Miss Thompson, like that's not really well done. The little scene with Alan and Amy, although cute, especially the idea that like Eric encourages them to still have whatever they can for the rest of their evening. It's just like it doesn't really tie in any way. So I
Why are you
like it.
making all these? You're making these true points, bro, and you're right. You're so right. Like, I'm romanticizing the show. That was my favorite growing up, but you're right. It's problematic as fuck, and I need to let go and give this the C that it deserves. I'm not going to go C minus, but it's a C,
Yeah.
and it's. I mean, separate from like the writing and the acting, like that's one thing. But I feel like just to be true to the podcast, like I have to take into account how
Yeah.
it ages. Like, I just have to. So I don't know.
Okay, so we have that. How about homework? Are you ready for homework?
Yes. So my homework for this week is I've become a real big fan of Jada Pickett Smith's Red Table Talks. I just
Yayo.
think they're really interesting. I think it's really interesting to see adults having conversations about feelings and how they're approaching social problems and political problems, and not in a way that's yelling or trying to get their point across or undermining anyone else at the table. It's just like just adults talking and listening to each other, and I think it's just so refreshing to see just honest, true conversation. And what's interesting is that Jay Smith is doing it with Willow, who's her daughter, and her mother. Um, and I think generationally, just to hear three different Black women from three different generations talk about their perception of the world is really fascinating to me. So, yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
All right, that's great. My homework is kind of a repeat. I had mentioned BoJack Horseman previously, and I talked about how it like helped with my depression and all this other stuff. But this season, the latest season just came out, season 5, and the entire season arc is about feminism and how it's being co-opted by like Hollywood and kind of diluted, and how well-intentioned men somehow still have effect, and like they never really pay the consequences that the women do even when they are harmed. So it's a really really great company piece to this episode where it's like we were just talking, we're like we're two guys talking about women's issues and all this other stuff, and I think it's really great to just kind of explore what that's like from a female perspective, because one of the things that
100%.
this show does, or that BoJack does this season, which I loved, is they one of the characters realizes that if she writes all of these think pieces and has the male character Bojack say them, then people will listen. And he says something along the lines of, that's the problem with feminism. Men weren't doing it before. And now that they are, people listen. And
Yeah.
it's a terrible joke, but it's kind of like a reality. And I just think basically going back to what you were even saying with the Red Table Talks, giving that voice back to the women And even with like all of the, like me recommending the Bechdel cast and all this other stuff, it's like seeing their perception of it is way better than us just talking about it. But
100%.
it's also really great.
Well, I
for
also
men
want to
to-
say too
yeah.
that like I want to say that we didn't start this podcast to be like this feminist podcast. It's
Not at
just
all.
ending up that there's just a lot of sexist issues in this particular show so far. So we're like naturally kind of like standing up for the women's perspective on it. If it were race, if it were sexuality, which again we've tried to point out those as equally as we've seen them, it's just we're seeing this so much more, and that's what's disappointing.
You know, I completely agree. And I think that, especially as you said, you and I kind of went into this just to be like, oh, yeah, we love Boy Meets World. Let's see how it holds up. And as two progressive young men, we're just like, oh, you know, even from my perspective, I feel like, you know, it's like, I feel like this ain't right.
This ain't cool.
But I just think that this season really, really does. What it does, again, if you want to edit this however you want to, but I just think it's really interesting, is it also asks the question, just because we call out a problematic character, does that normalize it, or does it actually make things better? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good question to ask when we're doing things like watching Boy Meets World and in some ways defending or like pushing past Cory's terrible behavior, but it's just kind of like, what are you gonna do? And I just think the question's worth asking.
Sure.
All right, so that is our episode, though.
Yeah, that was our episode. Good episode. Good episode.
Yeah,
lots to talk about. Lots of meat on this bone.
Lots of meat. I love that meat.
Uh-oh.
All right, so thank you guys for listening.
Oh, hey, real fast, just before we go, someone wrote in a name for my penis.
I love how back and forth we go. Feminism! Penis joke. Okay, but you're right. Someone did. Do you want to give her a shout out? Because I want to make sure that we.
I'm sorry, I don't have the mail in front of me to.
Give it to me. Hold on one second. All right, so this is Savannah. Savannah G is what I'm just going to say her name, because I don't think you want all your biz out there. But Savannah G wrote in, and we asked for unnamed genitalia, and she suggested Big Shawn. And great.
Big Shawn.
I think that's an absolutely perfect name. And so shall it be written, so shall it be done.
You know what? I'm not so quick to marry the idea. No offense to Savannah. I'm gonna try out Big Shawn for a while and see how this hat fits before we start making things permanent.
You know what? You gotta give him at least like a tour. You know, like the Big Shawn tour.
Don't get me wrong. I'll give him a decent trial run, but I'm not gonna buy it without trying it. Sorry.
As you shouldn't. No one never buy it without trying it. All right, so going back to it, thank you so much for listening to Boy Meets World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all of the things. Keep leaving us ratings, keep interacting with us on social media. All of it's at Boy Meets World, or email us at boymeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Ceej, that's XTRACEEJ. Timothy?
You can find me on Instagram at @ABraverMe. You can also find me. You know what I've been doing a lot recently?
What?
I've been dreaming. I've been trying, and I've been doing good lately. And I think that's something that's really worked out well for me. If you guys wanted to try that, I don't know if that's something
I think everyone should. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind throwing that out there. It's just something that I've been doing that's really been helpful.
All right, cool. So later, bros.
Later, bros.